The town of Asheville, North Carolina, was known for its art galleries, mountain views, and quiet charm. Tourists came for the Blue Ridge Parkway, the breweries, and the music festivals. Crime, at least the kind that made headlines, rarely touched the place. That changed on a warm summer night in July. Detective Jonah Hale had just finished his late dinner at a diner off Merriman Avenue when his phone buzzed. Dispatch sent him to Maplewood Apartments, a cluster of aging brick buildings where students, retirees, and struggling families all lived side by side. Jonah knew the place. He'd once busted a low-level drug ring there years back. When he arrived, the flashing strobes of police cruisers painted the courtyard in harsh red and blue. Neighbors had gathered behind the tape, whispering anxiously. "Third floor, Unit 308. Officer Riley briefed him. Caller was a tenant, heard shouting, then a loud bang. By the time she peeked out, the door was wide open and he exhaled. Victim was already down. Jonah nodded and climbed the narrow stairwell. Inside apartment 308, the air was thick with the metallic tang of blood. A man in his early 30s lay sprawled across the carpet, a single gunshot wound to the chest. His laptop still glowed faintly on the desk nearby, as though he had been working when death came. The victim's wallet identified him as Caleb Turner, a freelance journalist. Jonah's brows furrowed. He remembered the name. Turner had written a few pieces in local outlets exposing shady business practices, small-scale corruption. But why kill a journalist who barely made rent? Jonah's eyes scanned the apartment. Nothing was stolen. Phone, wallet, and laptop remained, but something was off. Papers were scattered across the table, most of them filled with notes, names, and dates. One page caught Jonah's eye. At the top was scrawled in hurried ink, Project Echo. Beneath it, half a sentence trailed off mid. Thought as though Turner had been interrupted. City contracts, money funneled through shell companies, ties to. The rest was soaked in blood. Back at the precinct, Jonah sat in the glow of his desk lamp, turning the phrase Project Echo over in his mind. He'd been a cop long enough to know when something smelled bigger than it looked. Turner hadn't been killed in a robbery gone wrong. He'd been silenced. His hunch was confirmed when the medical examiner called. Jonah, the bullet we pulled it's from a suppressed 9mm. Clean shot, professional. This wasn't some junkie or angry neighbor. Professional hit. In Asheville, Jonah leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. What had Caleb Turner stumbled into? The next morning, Jonah visited the paper where Turner occasionally freelanced. The editor, Maggie Rowe, was a sharp-tongued woman in her 50s who had little patience for cops. Caleb was stubborn, she said, fiddling with her glasses, always chasing stories he thought would make a difference. Most of the time, he annoyed people in City Hall, but lately, she hesitated. Jonah narrowed his eyes. Lately what? He told me he'd uncovered something big, said it wasn't just local corruption. He thought it reached higher, state contracts, millions of dollars. He called it Echo, but he never filed a draft. He kept everything to himself. Jonah felt the puzzle tightening around him. Turner had been on to something worth killing for. As he left the paper, a black sedan parked across the street caught his attention. The driver wore dark sunglasses despite the cloudy morning. Jonah's instincts prickled. He took a step toward it, but the car pulled away smoothly, disappearing into traffic. That night, Jonah sat in his apartment with Turner's notes spread across his kitchen table. Most of it was cryptic initials, numbers, fragments of conversations. But one thing stood out, a list of upcoming city council votes, all tied to infrastructure projects. And next to one name, circled twice in red, was a developer Jonah knew well, Alan Whitmore. Whitmore wasn't just a developer. He was a donor, a power player, and the kind of man whose name carried weight in Raleigh. Jonah's phone buzzed again. This time, no caller ID, he answered. A distorted voice rasped through the line, Detective Hale, if you value your life, stop asking about Echo. The line went dead. Jonah sat frozen, heart pounding. The walls of his quiet mountain town suddenly felt much smaller, and the shadows much darker. Whatever Echo was, it had reached him now, and it wasn't going to let go. Detective Jonah Hale didn't scare easily, but the anonymous call from the distorted voice stuck with him like a shadow he couldn't shake. In 20 years on the force, he'd dealt with gang leaders, armed fugitives, and men with nothing to lose. This felt different, cold, calculated, like he wasn't chasing the killer, he was being watched by them. He barely slept. By morning, he was back at the precinct, coffee in hand, staring at Caleb Turner's scattered notes. The name Alan Whitmore stared back at him in red ink. Jonah had dealt with Whitmore before. He was a polished real estate mogul who made speeches about revitalizing the city. But Jonah also knew Whitmore had a knack for cozying up to politicians and winning suspiciously easy bids on city projects. Could Turner have uncovered proof of payoffs, or worse, money laundering through city contracts? Jonah's partner, Detective Carla Vega, walked in, her curly hair tied back and her sharp eyes scanning the mess on his desk. "You look like hell," she said flatly. "Didn't sleep." Carla leaned closer. "This about Turner's murder," Jonah nodded. "He was onto something called Project Echo. Whatever it is, it ties back to Whitmore. Turner's notes weren't just paranoia. He found something real, and someone killed him for it." Carla frowned. "If Whitmore's mixed up in this, we're not just poking a horn, its nest, we're tearing it down." Jonah sighed. "Then we'd better wear gloves." That afternoon, Jonah and Carla visited Whitmore Enterprises, a sleek glass tower downtown. The receptionist smiled politely, but the chill in her eyes said she'd been trained to keep cops at arm's length. After some waiting, Whitmore himself appeared. Alan Whitmore was tall, silver-haired, his tailored suit worth more than Jonah's car. His handshake was firm, his smile polished for cameras. "Detectives," he said smoothly, "what can I do for the Asheville PD today?" Jonah studied him carefully. "We're investigating the death of Caleb Turner. You knew him." Whitmore's brow furrowed theatrically. "Ah," the journalist. "Tragic, but no, I didn't know him personally. I may have seen an article or two." Carla stepped in. "Your name was in his notes, circled, twice." For a fraction of a second, Whitmore's jaw tightened. Then the mask returned. "Detectives, my company wins public contracts because we're good at what we do. If a struggling reporter thought otherwise, I'm afraid that's not my concern." Jonah leaned in, lowering his voice. "Turner thought he'd found something called Echo. Does that mean anything to you?" Whitmore's eyes flickered, just briefly. "No," he said too quickly. "I've never heard of it." Jonah didn't believe him. As they left the tower, Carla muttered, "He's hiding something. You saw that twitch when you said Echo." Jonah nodded grimly. "Yeah, and he knows we're digging." That evening, Jonah returned home to find his front door slightly ajar. His pulse spiked. Gun drawn, he moved silently through the apartment. The living room lamp was on, though he hadn't left it that way. On his kitchen table, where Turner's notes had been spread out, now sat a single manila envelope. Inside was a photograph. It showed Caleb Turner, alive, standing in a parking garage. Across from him, half hidden in the shadows, was Alan Whitmore. The timestamp was dated 2 weeks before Turner's death. On the back of the photo, scrawled in black marker, were the words, "He talked too much. Don't be next." Jonah's throat went dry. Whoever had left this had broken into his home effortlessly. They wanted him to know how easily they could reach him. The next morning, Jonah met Carla at a diner. He slid the photo across the table. She stiffened. "Jesus, Hale, this is a warning." Jonah nodded, and proof Whitmore's lying. He met with Turner before he died. Carla tapped the photo. "So Turner probably threatened to publish something about Echo." Whitmore silenced him, "But this feels bigger. Whitmore's powerful, but not professional hitman with a suppressor powerful. Someone else is backing him." Jonah rubbed his temples. "Then who the hell is really behind Echo?" Before Carla could answer, a waitress approached with their check. She slid it onto the table with a polite smile and walked away. Jonah glanced at the paper. Scrawled on the back of the receipt in the same black marker was a chilling message. "Stop digging, detective. Last warning." He looked up, scanning the diner. Ordinary people ate pancakes and drank coffee, oblivious. Whoever had written the message had been close, right there in the room. Carla's hand tightened around her coffee cup, there watching us. Jonah nodded, a cold weight settling in his gut. The shadows of Asheville weren't silent anymore. They were speaking, and the message was clear. Echo wasn't just a project, it was a threat, one that had already marked Jonah Hale for death. The warning notes had rattled Jonah Hale, but they hadn't broken him. Fear had always been part of the job he'd buried partners, testified against men who swore vengeance, and walked into gunfire more than once. But this was different. Whoever was behind Echo wasn't just threatening him, they were playing with him, showing him they could reach into his home, his diner, his life. Jonah wasn't about to roll over. 2 days later, he and Carla pored over Turner's files in the evidence room. They kept their voices low, aware now that ears could be everywhere. "Look at this," Carla whispered, pointing to one of Turner's spreadsheets. "City contracts for infrastructure development, millions allocated for new road projects, but when you reference the sites, there's nothing there, no new roads, no crews, nothing." Jonah's eyes narrowed. Ghost projects, money siphoned into shell companies, and guess who signed off on most of them? Carla tapped another column, Alan Whitmore. Jonah leaned back, his mind racing. Turner had uncovered a scheme to funnel taxpayer money into fake projects, laundered through Whitmore's companies. But the files hinted at something larger, a network spanning multiple cities. A name kept appearing in the contractor list. ECI Holdings, never heard of it. Carla muttered, "Neither have I," Jonah said. But Turner wrote something next to it, Echo Core Initiative. That's what Echo stands for. Carla's face tightened. So Whitmore's not the mastermind, he's just one cog in the machine. That night, Jonah decided to push harder. He tracked down Lisa Turner, Caleb's younger sister, who lived on the edge of town. She opened the door cautiously, her eyes red from crying. "I already talked to the police," she said. "I'm not here for routine questions." Jonah replied gently. "I think your brother was onto something dangerous. If he told you anything at all, it could help me find who did this." Lisa hesitated, then led him inside. The small house smelled of candle wax and stale coffee. On her kitchen counter lay a stack of notebooks, Caleb's handwriting filling every page. He dropped these off a week before her voice cracked. "Before he died, he told me to keep them safe in case anything happened." Jonah flipped through the pages. Most of it echoed what he'd already seen: corruption, shell companies, names. But one entry made his pulse quicken. "Meeting scheduled with Whitmore at parking garage. Told me about Echo. Said they're everywhere, even in law enforcement. Can't trust anyone." Jonah's blood ran cold. Even in law enforcement. He glanced at Lisa. Did Caleb ever say who exactly was in Echo? No, she whispered, just that if he disappeared, I shouldn't go to the police. He said only a few people could be trusted. Her eyes locked on Jonah. "He said your name, he said you were one of the good ones." The weight of her words pressed on Jonah's chest. Caleb Turner had trusted him. Now it was up to him to prove that trust wasn't misplaced. As Jonah drove back toward the precinct, headlights flared in his rear-view mirror. A black SUV again, his grip tightened on the wheel. The vehicle stayed 2 cars back, matching his turns, never passing. Jonah pulled onto a quieter road, then suddenly braked hard and swung into an alley. The SUV sped past, tires screeching. Jonah caught a glimpse of tinted windows, a shadowy figure behind the wheel. No plates. They weren't just watching, they were hunting. Following morning, Jonah arrived at the precinct early, only to find Carla already there, staring grimly at her computer. "You're not going to like this," she said. "I ran ECI Holdings through state business registries. On paper, it's a construction consultancy, but dig deeper and you find the real owner." She turned the screen toward him. Jonah's stomach dropped. The listed owner was Deputy Chief Robert Mallory, their boss. "Son of a bitch," Jonah muttered. Caleb was right. Echoes inside the department. Carla lowered her voice. "If Mallory's running ECI, that means he's part of this, and if he suspects we know, we're dead." Jonah's phone buzzed again. A new text message, no number, your partner can't be trusted. He looked at Carla, his chest tightening. The message was meant to divide them, to break their trust, but Jonah couldn't shake the unease. If Echo had people inside law enforcement, how could he be certain Carla wasn't one of them? Carla noticed his hesitation. Don't tell me you're buying into that crap. We're in this together, Hale. Jonah nodded slowly, but doubt gnawed at him. That night, unable to shake the tension, Jonah returned to his apartment. As he unlocked the door, he froze. His notes, his photos, even Caleb's files, they were gone. Every scrap of evidence he'd collected had vanished. On his kitchen counter sat a single object, a police badge. Deputy Chief Mallory's, and beneath it, a handwritten note. We warned you. Next time, it won't be your desk we clean out. It'll be your body. Jonah clenched the badge in his fist, rage boiling beneath the fear. Echo wasn't hiding anymore. They had drawn the battle line, and he was standing on the wrong side of it. Detective Jonah Hale stared at the badge left on his kitchen counter. Deputy Chief Mallory's badge. It was too deliberate, too staged, like Echo wanted him to know who was in control. They weren't hiding anymore, they were taunting him, but Jonah had made up his mind. If they wanted him scared, they'd picked the wrong man. The next morning, he met Carla at a secluded coffee shop outside Asheville. He placed the badge and note on the table between them. Carla's eyes widened. They broke into your apartment again. Jonah nodded. They cleared out everything. Files, notes, Turner's journals, all gone, but they left this. They want me to know Mallory's running the show. Carla exhaled slowly. So, what's the move? If we go to internal affairs, Mallory buries it. If we go public, we've got nothing to show but scraps. Jonah leaned closer. Not nothing. Turner left us more than notes. His sister still has some of his encrypted files. If we crack them, maybe we'll find hard evidence tying Whitmore and Mallory to Echo. Carla hesitated, then nodded. Then we go through her. That night, Lisa Turner welcomed them back reluctantly. Jonah noticed how nervous she looked, peeking through the blinds every few minutes. They've been outside, she whispered. Cars I don't recognize, sitting there, watching. Jonah put a hand on her shoulder. You're safe with us. Just show us what Caleb gave you. She led them to her bedroom closet, where a shoebox was tucked behind old clothes. Inside were 3 USB drives, each labeled in Caleb's handwriting. He said these were the backups. If anyone found out, her voice broke. He knew they'd kill him. Jonah pocketed the drives carefully. Then we'll make sure his death means something. Back at the precinct's tech lab, after hours, with the lights dimmed, Jonah and Carla worked through the drives. Encrypted files, coded emails, offshore bank statements. It was a digital treasure chest of corruption. One file stopped Jonah cold. It was a ledger showing millions funneled from state infrastructure funds into accounts owned by ECI Holdings, Mallory's shell company. And next to his name, another, Alan Whitmore, but the ledger didn't stop there. The money trail stretched beyond Asheville to Raleigh, Charlotte, even out of state. Echo wasn't just a local racket. It was a network bleeding taxpayers dry on a massive scale. Carla whistled low. This is it? Proof enough to bury Mallory Whitmore, maybe half the state house. Jonah nodded, but his gut tightened. That's if we live long enough to hand it over. As if on cue, the lab door slammed open. Deputy Chief Mallory stepped inside, flanked by 2 armed officers Jonah didn't recognize. His face was calm, almost amused. Well, Mallory said smoothly, I told you to stop digging. Carla's hand twitched toward her gun, but Mallory raised his own, steady and cold. You think you're heroes, Mallory sneered, but you're pawns. Turner thought he could expose Echo. Look where he ended up. Do you really want the same? Jonah forced himself to stay calm. You're stealing from the people you swore to protect. You're no cop, you're a parasite. Mallory chuckled. And you're a dead man. He raised his gun, but Carla moved first. A deafening crack split the air. Mallory staggered, clutching his shoulder, his gun clattering to the floor. The 2 officers opened fire. but Jonah dove behind a desk, returning shots. One officer dropped. The other fled down the hall. Mallory groaned on the floor, blood pooling beneath him. Jonah loomed over him, gun drawn. Echoes finished. Jonah growled. Mallory smirked even through the pain. You think killing me changes anything? Echo isn't me. It isn't Whitmore. It's bigger than both of us. Cut off one head, 3 more grow back. Jonah's finger tightened on the trigger, but Carla's voice cut in. Don't. If he lives, he takes the whole network down with him. Jonah lowered the gun reluctantly, cuffing Mallory instead. By dawn, the FBI had descended on Asheville. With Caleb's files, Whitmore's photo, and Mallory in custody, the pieces of Echo's corruption unraveled fast. Arrests were made across the state, accounts were frozen. For the first time, the shadowy network seemed vulnerable. At Caleb Turner's grave a week later, Jonah stood with Lisa, the summer breeze stirring the trees. He trusted you, Lisa said softly. Jonah nodded. He was brave. He gave his life to uncover the truth. We just finished what he started. Carla joined them, her face tired but proud. Echo won't vanish overnight. Mallory was right about that, but at least now the light's on them, and shadows don't last long under the light. Jonah looked out over the hills, the weight of the case finally settling on his shoulders. For the first time in weeks, he felt something close to peace. Silent echoes had tried to bury the truth, but the truth had found its voice.